Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Hello, this is No, and I believe that if you take cranberries and stew them like applesauce, they taste much more like prunes than rhubarb does. Welcome to the After Effects Kickstart podcast.
All right. This is the first part of our 4-part interview series, and I am really super excited about this. I think that this is going to be something that you're going to learn a lot from, and it's going to be really inspirational. That is my hope, okay? Before we get down to the first interview, I just wanted to explain how it's going to work and, just run you through this process a little bit. So each week I'll be talking with a different young person who learned After Effects pretty recently and got into the industry, I'm going to say in the last year or two maybe, but have already landed jobs at top motion design studios, okay? So I think this is really interesting, and part of the reason why is because this certainly was not my experience, and honestly, it just really isn't how it is for most people. These people are definitely exceptional. And I always kind of wondered, how does that happen to somebody? How do some young people excel really quickly and kind of wind up so close to the top of the industry? Are they really insanely talented, or did they get really lucky, or some sort of combination, or what, okay? So I thought this would be really inspirational for all of you listening, because you're just learning After Effects right now. And so maybe you could get a few pointers on how you can actually accomplish something similar. And this goes for pretty much anybody, no matter what age you are, or where you even are in your career. So I think this is really going to teach a lot, even to me. So I thought it'd be kind of fun as well to hear, since you're going through this struggle maybe of learning After Effects, sort of what it was like for these people to learn After Effects, and maybe to hear about their struggles too, because, it's not really easy for anybody. And maybe you'll get some good advice from them about, what they went through, or something will make sense to you in a different way after hearing them, okay? So I tried to ask all 4 of them pretty much the same questions, so that it's most clear for us to sort of compare and contrast the differences kind of between their lives, their approaches to learning motion design and After Effects, and kind of the way that they entered the workforce and steered their careers. All their stories are really different, even though, it sounds like they all kind of have the same story. I think, what we'll find is that obviously they're all really different as individuals, but there's a lot of common threads and overlaps between their stories, as well as, a lot of, some really big differences, I guess. So yeah, I think this is going to kick ass, basically, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this. So today we have an interview with a really nice, really talented guy named Taylor John Peters. Now, Taylor is definitely the exception and not the rule, okay? Taylor figured out what he wanted to do as a child and pursued it with a laser-like focus since then. So, not everybody's like that, and that's totally fine. We don't all need to be like Taylor to do well and be successful in this career. But I met him recently, and I found his story incredibly inspirational, and I definitely wanted to share that story with you guys. I don't want to say too much, but spoiler alert, he's 19 years old and is a full-time job at Giant Ant, which, if you don't know Giant Ant, it's really one of the top motion graphics studios in the world. And, Taylor's not a jerk. He's a really nice guy. And I think, you're just really can learn a lot from listening to him. I learned a lot from listening to him, and I'm, much, much older, okay? So let's jump in and hear what he has to say. All right, I'm really excited about today's podcast and our guest. As an introduction, I'm going to let him introduce himself, actually. So let's start, and let me ask you the question: who are you, and where do you work, and how long have you been animating?
Oh, geez. My name is Taylor Peters. I work at the amazing studio Giant Ant, and I've been animating, I guess since I was maybe 10, but animating is a very loose term. I used to make stop motion videos of Lego people, so I guess that was the first time I animated. But I guess I've been animating professionally for 2 years or so. So, yeah.
That's amazing. I'd love to see some of those movies at some point once you're very famous.
They're long gone, which is sad. But
Was there something in particular? I mean, 10 years old is pretty young to start to think about this. Was there something in particular that, made you get into it, or was it just sort of something you've always had in your mind?
I honestly don't know. I feel like it just like naturally happened because my dad's an IT guy, so he brought home a computer at some point. So I'd always been around computers and stuff, and then I think my mom and dad bought me a camera, like a really, really bad digital point and shoot camera. And I had Lego people, and I was like, okay. And I somehow figured it out. I don't know if there was ever like a moment where I figured it out. That being animating as a 10-year-old. As far as motion design goes, I think I was in school, and it was kind of the same situation. I was really lucky to have an animation course in high school, which is crazy. Even though it was really simple, all the projects that I was working on, I was doing graphic design, I was doing animation, I was doing all this stuff, and I kind of sat down with my teacher at one point, and we're like, okay, I got to go to college or something soon, and these are the things you're doing. And then we ended up finding I think a course at VFS that was called digital design, and that was like the first time I was like, oh, motion design, and then it kind of went off from there.
Right. So you grew up in the Vancouver area, is that correct?
No, I'm actually one province over, so Canada area, I guess, but yeah.
That's kind of a big area there, I guess. That's so cool that you had classes like that in high school. Man, I wish every high school had that class. So what kind of animation were you doing in high school in that class?
This is like the crazy thing. Like I did 3D animation in 3ds Max, and I did a little bit of After Effects animation, and then a little bit of like hand drawn stuff. Like it was nice because I guess I was at a little bit more of a advanced level because of my interests outside of school. So everybody else in class was kind of very focused on the class projects, but my teacher let me kind of experiment with stuff. But yeah, I think like half the class was 2D animation, and then the other half was 3D, which is crazy. But yeah.
Wow, that's insane. I mean, I guess you had all that Lego experience, so they let you go.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
So, well, actually, because of this class is really focused on learning After Effects, this is a great segue into, so that high school class, you actually touched After Effects for the first time in that class and started learning it then?
I think the first time would have been outside of that class, but that was like doing Video Copilot intros and stuff for skateboard videos. And then like, I guess that would have been like the first real time where I was like trying to make something that wasn't that. But yeah, so probably then.
Okay, I mean, can you remember like the first time that you touched After Effects, how confusing maybe it seemed to you then? I don't know.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is like following Video Copilot tutorials, I had no idea what I was doing the entire time. He's like, click this button. I was like, okay, this button, whatever it does, and then like on to the next one, on to the next one. And what's really embarrassing is honestly up until like maybe last year, that was still kind of my mindset with it, was because I never really figured out what things did for quite a while, because I don't know, I just like things did stuff and I was like, okay. And then so it's been honestly more recently that I've gotten a way better understanding of it. But it's yeah, it can be a really daunting program, certainly, if you don't actually know what's going on.
Absolutely. I definitely want to ask you about the progress and the things that you've learned, but if there's anything else that you thought was very challenging for you in particular, I'd love to hear about that.
I think the weirdest, like the most confusing concept was separating position. I don't know if that's too specific, but separating position values was very confusing, because you always get that weird, sometimes the interpolation between two keyframes, even if they're the exact same, do the little swoopy thing.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And I never understood what that was doing, and I was like, but how do I? And so once I figured that out, that changed a lot of things.
Right. That's awesome. So you have to. Yeah. That's like a preference where you have to convert the
non-linear. There's some preference.
It's the spatial interpolation.
Yes.
That's the one.
Non-default spatial interpolation or something under preferences.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure there are people taking this class right now who have been totally confused by that.
Currently listening to this while they're like,
What am I doing?
that exact same thing. It's such a weird, like, non-intuitive thing to happen, and you're like, yeah.
It is. That happens to me all the time still, and I'm like, oh, now I have to get in there and adjust the Bezier handle back. Yeah, I kind of wish they'd figure out something better with that. So that's awesome. And you said there were also recently some kind of more like aha moments, or some moments where something's clicked and you felt like you understood After Effects better. I don't know if it's possible for you to put that into words, like what you kind of got, but
well, I think as like the kind of work I was working on changed, the more I had to learn as a matter of like survival. That changed a lot. Because originally when I was out of high school and I was like kind of getting into motion design, I was actually focusing, like, I think my biggest project I did MoGraph Mentor, the first class, and the biggest project I did was all Photoshop. So it was about a year in that I realized, like, I haven't touched After Effects yet, and that's like a pretty big part of like a lot of this style of animation. And so it just like, yeah, I like had all these ideas and then I had to kind of make them happen. And After Effects, like learning all the actual fundamentals, like that interpolation thing and like separating position data and stuff. Like, I think I started animating a project in After Effects and I like asked that to someone. They're like, "What do you mean you don't know that?" Like, yeah. So, yeah.
yeah.
Taylor,
well,
I have a question. Actually. When I learned After Effects, I kind of dove right into the technical stuff and really kind of geeked out on, what is spatial interpolation and what does this effect do? And then it took me years before I realized, I also need to understand how animation works and how design works. And I'm wondering if how you've kind of grappled with that, learning the app, which is a technical skill, but also knowing how to make it, do something that looks pretty, which is kind of the artistic side, the design side.
Well, I think I was super fortunate, as I was saying, to have had all these high school classes, because throughout those high school classes, like I was in software, maybe not necessarily After Effects, but software in general. And my dad was super nerdy, so like I've always been around computers and software. So I think I could say that I pick stuff up a little bit faster just because of that. And so, and I'm not too far in that I think, and I had a really great mentor that helped me understand the importance of the animation side, which is why I ended up taking the boot camp, because I didn't even realize throughout high school, I don't think my teacher mentioned like animation principles at all. So it was
right.
I like was learning the software, but like they had no idea about animation. So I guess, yeah, as my very short career so far, I've been lucky enough to get pointed in the right direction to make sure to pay attention to those things.
That's huge. That's something I'd want to just stress to all the students listening, because you've learned it much earlier than I did, which is that it's kind of, if you're looking at After Effects, it's kind of like a three-headed dragon, where you've got the software, which is one head you have to slay. Yeah. Then you've also got animation principles, and you were talking about Animation Bootcamp, which is another one of our courses. Yeah. And then design is the other side, which is, what color are things and how big are they and all that stuff. And they are really three separate things to learn, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and that's why you see, like, that's what I always am so impressed by the motion design industry. There's some people that get like really upset that we're like, you're animators, stop calling yourself motion designers, and like, but it's like we're the only people that are like animating, designing, doing 3D modeling, and it's like it's a whole bag of tricks, and
yeah,
you gotta put your time in for each one, and yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, is there anything in particular that you think that students in this class should focus on or keep in mind? Like, would you have any really good advice for them? Could you be a mentor like to them the way that you were mentored by so many great people?
In After Effects specifically, or
In motion design or in After Effects?
motion design? Um, this is kind of counterintuitive, but learn the software, but also learn to problem solve. If there's one thing that I've like been shown at Giant Ant, and like maybe not even shown, just like had to realize, was like, if you're given a style frame, don't always be like, okay, what After Effects plugin am I going to use? You gotta think about it on a deeper level, I guess, because it's like your animators first, I guess, and don't always get caught up in the method, because sometimes, or in the software, because sometimes you could be like, I guess a lot of times I'll be like struggling on something, and then someone like Enrique will come over and he'll be like, oh, why don't you just draw it? And I'm like, oh, that makes it way easier. Like, why am I trying to fight with this? And it's just, it's really easy to get caught up on like getting caught up in your own styles and preferences. And sometimes it's just easier to like take a step back and be like, how can I solve this problem regardless of what I'm like intending to use software wise,
Yeah, man, that's super great advice for our students. And I think that's something that you really learn a lot working professionally. I mean, people just put challenges in front of you, and you have a tight deadline, and you just have to make something work and make it work well. And sometimes it's easy for animators, I think, to get really caught up in these technical solutions rather than just thinking through it like, okay, what is kind of the best way for this to move, or what is the easiest way to accomplish this, or, you know, without getting hung up in like a lot of technical stuff. So that's great advice. So thank you for
all
that.
of a sudden you need to learn how to write code, and then you're like,
right, and then you spend 2 days.
But
exactly. I made this ball bounce perfectly using code, and then like,
that is something you're bringing up a really good point, Taylor, which is that, and this is, I've fell into this trap too when I was starting out, which is that you assume, especially if you kind of came up watching Video Copilot tutorials where you're seeing like one of the best, you know, kind of creative After Effects users out there, you think there's always a trick and there's always some way to do this really easily. And the truth is, a lot of times there's not. And you just have to use brute force. And that's why it's amazing that Enrique, and you're talking about Enrique Barone, who's amazing traditional animator, to just come up and say, look, you could just draw that and quit trying to figure out what the trick is and just do it, you know? And a lot of times that's the way you have to solve the problem.
I wish I had Enrique Barone sitting
me too.
next to me. Or maybe I don't. I don't know. If the students don't know him, you should definitely check out his work, and we'll link to him in this PDF.
Oh my goodness,
and you know, I think that provides us a really good segue actually into the next phase of this, which is, you know, I'd love, so for those who don't know Giant Ant, I guess, if you don't and you're in motion design and you're hearing this, you should definitely check out Giant Ant, because they are one of the premier design and animation studios of our day, and have been, I'd say, for the last number of years. They're definitely on top of their game. So I'd love to hear from you how you got your job there.
Oh man, this is a long story. I had to explain this to a lot of people at Blend, because they're like, "What did you do?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just been like honestly, just a cascading series of luck events, like just like people being overly gracious and giving me all these chances that I may or may not deserve. I don't know how far back I should go. In high school, it's just a long timeline, you know. In high school, after that moment when I figured out with my teacher that I was a motion designer, where it was this sudden realization, I thought that I was going to go to Vancouver Film School. And my favorite studio was Giant Ant. I knew their work before I knew that it was motion design. And so I basically was like, okay, I better send an email if they're my favorite studio and I want to work for them. And I found out that at the time Jorge had gone to Vancouver Film School, who was working there at the time. I think Sean went there, and Nicholas Fiera, I don't even know how to say his last name. But and so I just sent an email. I was like, hey, like, I'm a kid and I'm trying to go to school and I don't know where to go to school. And I also saw that someone in a video about who you are had a skateboard tattoo. So if you could give me the email of that guy or girl or whatever, and I ended up getting Sean Height's email, and he went to Vancouver Film School, and he did not need to even reply to me, but he sent me like a 3-page email about the value of Vancouver Film School, because my question was like, was the cost worth it? And so he sent me this huge email. So we had this correspondence before, and I don't know, it'd been a year later. My family was out for Christmas, and I sent him an email. And I was like, hey man, like I'm in the Vancouver area. Do you want to go get coffee or something? And he ended up being like, oh, you want to go snowboarding? So that's just like the weirdest, like just the kindest guy. So we ended up going snowboarding and started talking a lot. So I ended up skateboarding with him quite a bit and was around the studio every once in a while. And I got an email from him one day, or a text message or whatever, and he was like, hey, Giant Ant's looking for animators. And I was like, oh, right, this is my time. And so I applied for it and kind of started talking to Jay, and then got Jay to go for coffee with me. And we were sitting in the coffee shop, and he's like, you can't be an animator at Giant Ant. Like, he just like kind of told me, he's like, you don't have the experience to be an animator at Giant Ant. So I was like, can I have an internship instead? And then, I mean, that's kind of how it happened. And I mean, 2 weeks had passed and he hadn't replied to me. So I was like, okay, it's probably not going to happen. And I was whatever. And then, yeah, I got an email from him. He's like, okay, you want to be our intern? And I became an intern. And then I started interning in, I don't know, maybe the end of October, start of November. And then they offered me a full-time job about 3 months in, I think. And
Wow.
now I'm here. I don't know if that was the least cohesive story ever, but
That was great, man. I mean, my mind is kind of blown a little bit, but I'm just in my mind, I'm kind of summing that up as you were really enthusiastic and you networked really well, and you definitely got a little bit lucky in that, like, you kind of found Sean, who was kind of a kind of brother from a different mother, kind of kindred spirit kind of person, and you had this sort of skateboarding connection, and somehow that kind of, but what's nice about that too is that you did face some, I mean, what's nice about that as a story, probably not in real life, was that you did face some rejection, and that Jay kind of told you, like, listen, you can't do this, but you kind of still managed to find your way in and find your way in. So I think, there's a little bit of luck in that, but I think a lot of that is really you, and that's amazing, and you're my hero, so great job.
Did you end up going to Vancouver Film School at all, or did that just never happen?
no, that never happened. You don't just like casually drop $2,700 or $1,000 to go to school. So I just never ended up doing that. Didn't have that laying around, or else maybe, I don't know, but yeah.
I mean, I gotta say that it's incredible, and it's something that doesn't surprise me that much, honestly, that you didn't go to school for this, and yet you're working at Giant Ant. And I assure everyone listening, I'm not trying to do this in a self-serving way, but but I'd love to know, like, because you work with people who have gone to Vancouver Film School and other schools and went to college for this, but you haven't. Do you feel any disadvantages? Are there things that you wish you got by going to college that you don't have, or do you think that at this point you've found the resources, you've done MoGraph Mentor, you've done one of our boot camps, and you've worked really hard on your own? Is that enough in today's kind of world?
Well, the only way to put it is I don't feel at a disadvantage at all. Like, the fact that I didn't go to college doesn't leave me at a disadvantage. I think the fact that, like, I'm at a disadvantage leaves me at a disadvantage. Like, if you look at the work that is that confusing? If you look at the work that everybody's doing there, like, they're at such a high level that the only thing that I feel like I'm missing is the experience and the time. You know what I mean? It's but like, yeah, like, I think 90% of everything that everybody I work with knows was acquired outside of college. And like, a great example, Jay, Eric, and Raph all went to industrial design school. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, and so for myself, like, doing MoGraph Mentor, doing the School of Motion, like that was, I don't know, all I needed. And then, I mean, okay, technically I'm missing out on like parties and stuff and whatever goes on at college and high school. But yeah, like I don't know, like I feel like I've been set up perfectly fine. And I mean, nothing's going to prepare you for studio life. Like there's always these different work dynamics and getting along with your colleagues and like all that stuff. Like that obviously is like stuff I'm learning because I'm new to having a full-time job entirely almost. I mean, I've had them before, but like not in this context. So yeah, like I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I just know that I'm gonna earn it or like learn it. No.
That's a great answer, man.
In a way, you're like in school now, doing exactly what you want to
100%,
do.
yeah.
The only thing I would say about this, and I told you this is bland, I think you should also travel the world a little bit and not just be a motion person who works at Giant Ant and does motion stuff. Because I think you might limit yourself, and it's just good to have outside interests. You know,
like a part of some weird kidnapping scheme where they kidnapped an animator and didn't let him leave for 15 years, and then
they chained him to his
I'll walk out of Giant Ant one day. Two police on my side, like we got him.
Right, like a long beard and like a fugitive from Giant Ant. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I am curious, you know, what it is like to work there, especially as like a younger person coming in, and then suddenly you're thrown into this pit with the best people in the world. You know, is that intimidating? Obviously, you know. Well, just tell me, what's it like?
Oh yeah, it's definitely super intimidating. I think Joey, you did a podcast on imposter syndrome. That's my work title there. Is like
it's your life.
That's my life. Yeah. No, everybody's super amazing. It's a little family. Like I see them more than any other people, and that's not just because I work Monday to Friday 9 to 6. It's because like we go to like events and we go to baseball games and we do stuff together, which is really great. So like as far as like the studio interaction aspect of everything, like it's really amazing. As far as working there goes, it's been kind of a blur because I was really dropped into it right away. I think when I was doing my internship, there was one project that was a little bit slower, and then all of a sudden we were like doing this one crazy project that was like just I don't know, like crazy not hours, but like mental whatever. See, I should have gone to school, guys. No, but like like it was just like a lot more taxing on my brain, so it was just like right into the work. And then I don't know, it feels like, even though we've had Christmas break and everything, because we have 2 weeks off at Christmas, not because it's like school, but it still feels like I'm just like still in on it. So it's been really cool working with people that know what they're doing, because a lot of the times if I don't know what I'm doing, I can just like peek my head up over a computer and be like, how do you do this? And like I've never gotten a shut up Taylor or anything. Like it's just like they'll come over and help me. Especially
It's
Enrique,
a pretty small
because
team too, right?
Yeah, it's about 13 people. So, or maybe that's wrong. 14 now, something like that. So yeah, tiny.
Yeah, intimate group. That's sort of nice that it's got a family atmosphere. It certainly feels like that from the outside. Like it seems like one of those studios where people care about each other and they care about the work that they do, and it just feels like it's got to be one of those places where it's a nice place to work, you'd think. Yeah. I'm surprised. So you said 9 to 6. I mean, so they keep those kind of hours, or are people working there till like 2 a.m. sometimes?
The way that it's formatted and the way that the producers and everybody tries to make it happen is that we stay there from 9 to 6. Like that's the idea. Nobody's supposed to be here any later. But I will say on like many occasions I've been like loving what I'm doing, so I like stay a little bit later. But it's 9 to 6 is typically what we do.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah. I mean, so you were like doing tutorials and learning all this stuff on your own and taking MoGraph Mentor and Animation Boot Camp and that kind of thing, and then you got dropped into this super professional high-level world. And I'm kind of wondering if there's anything professionally that you've kind of learned or that's really clicked for you in that time that you might be able to, give our students a heads up on.
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, it's the only thing is just like learning to communicate. Like it's been for me, like even my first MoGraph job where I was like an editor at an ad agency in Vancouver, I was the only animator. And the only this was like my first explainer video I ever animated was for some company that wasn't paying us. Like it was an equity deal for like some startup thing. It was like it was a weird situation. It was like the owner's friend, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
Been
But
there.
yeah, it was more interesting having my two bosses be like, "Yes, this is a good idea. This is equity finally." Yeah, so so now being in the studio where it's like, oh shoot, I got an art director that I need to talk to. I have somebody else who like we just released this Spotify project, and it was kind of cool. It was just me and Connor were like one video, Sichi and Diego this other video, and so like each crew took on one of the three videos, and yeah, like it was I own the master file for it, so I was comping all the scenes, and yeah, like it just came near the end of it, and I was like, I really wish I had communicated better. So this is even recent that I'm still figuring this out, but just being able to I don't know, like clearly share your thoughts, and yeah, just make sure everything is like rolling as it's supposed to be. And if you have any doubts, like be like, hey, is everything working? Like, are we on the right track? And that's like something I've learned, because I guess I'm used to being a lone wolf. So
Right.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Working in a team, definitely, and being married. I guess I figured that one out a couple
Yeah.
years ago myself. But
Oh, geez, yeah.
but that is a huge change of going from sort of being a student or working on your own in an agency, and then being part of a larger team, and how you fit in and how you have to communicate with the people around you. Yeah, that's huge. I could see that. That is a bit of a challenge. I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like, as a result of working in these teams with these higher level people, that your work has gotten a lot better, or how do you feel like your personally your work has changed as a result of working there?
Animation wise, 100%. Because I mean, I am primarily animating at Giant Ant. I'm not doing a lot of design. I think I did one type lockup once, so that was sweet. And that's not a complaint at all. I love animation, and then design I do at home basically. So yeah, animation it's been crazy growth, because as I said, you kind of just get thrown into the pit. Oh, that sounds negative. You get thrown into the ring. It's also negative, but yeah, you get thrown in, and what was cool about Jay and everybody there was like, even though in my mind I was like, I don't know what I'm doing at all, they kind of were like, you're good. Here's a shot. Like, you know how to animate this? And I was like, I don't know how to animate this. They're like, you know how to animate this? I was like, okay. And then like you just kind of do it, and you figure it out. And
That's awesome. They had so much confidence in you. That's great.
yeah,
Here.
it was terrible at first.
Right.
Well, you bring up a good point, Taylor, which, and you mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, and I don't think that for anybody, there's ever a moment where you're like, okay, now I'm ready to be a professional. Now I'm comfortable asking to be paid to do this. I think there, like, for the first 6 months, a year, whatever of your career, you're just going to feel like you're kind of out of place, and you're faking it, and you're just waiting for the shoe to drop. And that's normal. Like, everybody feels that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say first 6 months or first 6 years?
Well, as some of us, we discover that you can like dull that feeling with caffeine or beer. We all have coping mechanisms.
I've been doing that with coffee for sure then, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why it's been a good week, I see. I've been drinking an extra amount of coffee.
Good.
That'll do you well. Absolutely. Coffee's gotten me through more jobs than anything else, I think.
Yeah, maybe that's the biggest thing I've learned. I don't think I drank coffee before I came out here. And now I'm just
Did you learn that as part of your internship, or was that only once you started working free time?
No, that was my first job because I was commuting from 2 hours away and kept falling asleep at my desk, so I just had to keep drinking coffee.
Wow.
And now it's out of hand now.
How many cups a day?
Oh geez, yesterday I woke up, made myself a French press at home, had a coffee as soon as I got into the office. Okay, only 3. But still that's quite
You work on that.
I'll work on that. Yeah.
They're large coffees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been trying to make myself not do it because I'm like, all right, I'll have another coffee like I'm like drinking a glass of juice or something, but it's a little bit more it's a little bit more high risk, I think. So I try to avoid it.
That's good. Yeah, you don't want to fry your stomach too badly. I did want to ask a question about internship. I assume that you recommend them for people since you had such good luck with it. But for our students, is that something that you recommend? And would you talk about that process at all?
Oh yeah, and I think anybody you talk to that has done an internship, it's like, why wouldn't you? Like, it's not. I mean, I guess there's like a commitment level. Like, if you're coming from another country, I know, and I've talked to people, and I've seen it happen with internships becoming available. But it's just like, oh, you got to go get a visa, and you got to move, and like, so there's like all these things. But like the value of it's insane. Like getting to, especially if you're just getting into all of this, getting to sit down and work with people. We just got a new intern at Giant Ant, Whitney. You should also link her work in the description. She won a Motion Award, which is imposter syndrome. Our freaking interns better than me, but
Oh, she won one of the student motion awards.
yeah.
I know which piece you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
amazing.
really great. And yeah, and like, I don't know, like it's the same thing. Like you just get dropped in on all this, and you're just like working with Giant Ant all of a sudden. Like you're an intern, but you're like you're in everything, and it's a little bit lower risk because it's like people are like, oh, they're an intern, so we can figure it out, you know. And that was like my favorite part because I was like, even for the first month or so of my internship, I was like still trying to figure out what I was doing, and everybody was like super patient. So it's like an awesome opportunity to like get your foot in the door. Like you can't work with someone for 40 hours a week and not get to know them. And so now you've got all these friends at your favorite studio, and like, you know what I mean? So it's yeah, if you get an opportunity to do it, and like send emails, find studios that you love, and like just send the emails because like everybody's super nice in this industry. It's crazy.
It's true.
Yeah, great advice, everybody. Great advice. And promoting yourself is such an important part of doing this kind of work. I feel like it's an essential part, actually. I think there's a lot of people who are very talented in our industry, and then there's a lot of people that are very talented and really good at promoting themselves. And I think what I see is that those people tend to rise up to the top, obviously. So, yeah, good for you. All right, well, gosh. Let me see. Starting to get into the wrapping this up a little bit, I think. But I'm curious, like, what are aspects of motion design in general that you're working on? I mean, I think my guess is that you're doing a lot of kind of hand-drawn cell stuff, but are there any new programs or techniques or anything that you want to talk about that is making you excited?
Yeah, traditional animation has kind of been my world for the last maybe a year now, just because when I was working at this other agency, I didn't get to do a lot of that kind of animation. Like there was just no room for it. So when I got home, that's what I was studying. And now it's just kind of continued on and luckily become a part of my actual job, which is crazy. I think that's the biggest one. A little bit of character design, which is unrelated. I've always been really passionate about, or not interested in, like feature animation stuff. I've never wanted to work in it, but I've always just been like, I've loved the art from it. I've loved all that stuff. So I've been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to do that, which has been really fun.
Like drawing characters, or you mean, what do you mean? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like specifically drawing, like having a bio of a character and like trying to show that character using all that like silhouette and shape language and all this stuff. I've just been spending.
Right.
It's like the furthest thing from motion graphics, because it's not like, how do I make an appealing character that can sell a product, which is a very specific. But you
Right.
like, I've been trying to be like how like a I don't know, a chef whose uncle died or something, movie stuff. I don't know. It's
Right. So is this possibly a future thing for you, is to write and create characters and then animate them and make films that way?
I think it's always been there to be like try and make a short film, but it's a huge ask. So I don't know if I've never gotten past the story part, basically. But it's just such I'd love to one day. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to know that you're not also an amazing writer as well as an amazing animator and character designer.
Not yet.
I'm sure if you'd ask Joey and I for some help coming up with some story ideas.
There we go.
I think listening to me on this podcast, you'll find out I'm not a good writer.
Well, you have time, I think, and I'm sure there's some good writers. And Jay's a pretty good writer, from what I remember.
Yeah,
So
everybody at this. Well, not everybody. I don't know everybody. Everybody's writing skill, but I know they're like Jay, and I think Corey writes a lot of the scripts, and I think they're working on a feature right now, which is cool, which is Tangles, which I think is on our website. If not, I'm fired.
You can always edit that out.
Yeah. There's lots of good writers, so I gotta ask them questions, I'm sure. But
Well, that's awesome, man. I can't wait to see your first feature film in the
coming
future.
out 2024. Look out for it.
Yeah, we're huge fans of your work here, and we're really proud of your accomplishments. And I don't know if there's any other advice that you want to give to people taking this class, or for people who are just getting into motion design now, but that's my last question.
Oh, piece of advice. See, you sent me these questions, but I didn't read them too thoroughly. Oh no.
Be prepared then. That's your
I
answer.
had a good, be prepared.
Well, let me try to lead you a little bit, Taylor, because
Yes,
I've been kind of quiet during this interview, just listening. Because I got to tell you, you might be aware of this on some level, but you're sort of a rare bird in that you very quickly identified what you love, and you had the drive and I would use the word cojones to actually go after it and contact Giant Ant, and here you are. I don't even think we've mentioned your age in this interview, but can you tell everybody how old you are right now?
19.
You're 19 and you're working at Giant Ant. And so the lesson that, frankly, even me, I'm 36 at the time of this recording. What I take away from it is just try, just put yourself out there, because, if you were a really shy person and you let that imposter syndrome creep up on you, you may never have reached out to Giant Ant. You might have just told yourself, you know what? Nope, I'm not good enough. I'm not even going to bother. And who knows what you'd be doing right now. And maybe you'd be at Vancouver Film School with a giant, student loan payment coming your way in a few years. And instead, you're learning probably the best way you possibly could, which is at Giant Ant. So if I'm putting words in your mouth, I would say put yourself out there and don't wait until you feel ready to try and run at it.
That's a good one. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You want to walk around with me so I can order coffee better and stuff? Because I'm really bad at that too.
I need a Taylor puppet that I can walk around with.
Yeah. No, but try is. I've been amazed. I have friends that are in the same. I mean, not animating friends, but just friends in the creative industry that are very, very timid. They're oh, I love that person, and then they don't do anything about it. And I'm just send them an email. What if that person's oh, thanks for that email. I'm actually looking for blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you've got a job. It's such an easy email to write. And it's the best thing that you can do. You're going to make someone's day if you do send an email saying hey, I love your work. And that isn't commenting on people's Behance posts. Hey, this is some really great work. Please check out my page. Don't do that. Right. But send personal emails, and also don't have a template, because studio owners talk. So they don't want to get together. thing that said, "Hey, I'm Taylor from blank," and you know what I mean. So like,
And
if
you
you love
asked
a
them for
studio,
advice too, which I think is great. Like you
yeah.
you've been asking for advice, not just like, hey, check out my work, look at me. You know, it was more like,
Yeah,
what do you
yeah.
think about this? So I think that's a great method. You know.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, like people are so generous in this industry. Like, I mean, a perfect example is 2 years ago when I sent that email to Sean, and I was ready for Vancouver Film School was all right, thanks, bye. And then I ended up getting this huge, like, comprehensive review of Vancouver Film School and like all that stuff. So it's like people will do that, and I don't think it's a rare occurrence that would happen. I know I've replied to emails before. I'm sure you guys do it all the time. So it's like,
Yep.
yeah,
It's still a
send
hard
me
thing
emails.
to. Yeah. Great advice. It's a hard thing for a lot of people to do. I think, especially young people. You know, if they don't
Yeah.
feel confident, they're like, I don't. You know, the imposter syndrome takes over. They're like, I'm not good enough to work there or whatever.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I think your advice would be more just like do it and get there and change and just keep rolling with it.
That totally. Like nobody, like I don't think wherever you want to be, if you're already good enough to be there, then maybe you should like aim higher. You know what I mean? Like, so there's always going to be that feeling that's like, oh, I'm not good enough, and that's like, oh, take advantage of that. Like that's what you need. That's the drive you need. So it's
Yes, lean into that. It's brilliant.
lean in. Yeah.
You figured that out about 20 years before I did.
Yeah, exactly.
It's because I got great friends like you guys. So
Okay. Well, thanks so much, man. This was really eye-opening. I think this is great for our listeners and really inspirational for me as well. So, yeah, thanks for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate
no
it.
worries.
Wow. He really laid down some juicy tidbits of knowledge for us. So thank you to Taylor John Peters one more time. In the spirit of like networking and thank youing, I think you should definitely follow him on Twitter at Taylor John Peters, and we could provide a link to that handle, but it's TaylorJohnPeters, okay? And thank him yourself and tell him that you heard this interview. I think he'll really get a kick out of that. And seriously, I bet you if you have more questions for him, you could probably ask him on Twitter. He's really nice, and I think he'd be more than happy to give advice to people if you're cool about it. So, definitely think about that. And also definitely check out Giant Ant's work and follow them on Vimeo. I think they were part of my spiel about joining the community, but if not, definitely follow them. They are really excellent, and you should look at all their work. So, I'm just amazed by Taylor, and I'm really inspired and think he has such a great story. And I think he's a really perfect example of someone who has a natural gift of self-promotion, which I think is so important and just a skill that not everybody has. And frankly, I think it's something that really makes the difference for a lot of people. Obviously, he's a really talented guy, and if you're only good at self-promotion and you don't have any talent, you probably won't go far. But if you have some talent and you're really good at self-promotion, I think you'll go really far. So, I think definitely take his advice, and don't be afraid to reach out and put yourself out there, even at a young age. If you are young and you're listening to this, people are really nice in this industry, and we all entering this just felt like this was this insurmountable mountain that we could never get over. And I think people really try to like help people when they're feeling that way, especially if you're cool and not pushy and you're somebody that just seems like somebody that they'd be friends with. So definitely take the risk and put yourself out there. And also, I love that he said to aim high. I just think that's great advice. And obviously, he's living proof of the success of this philosophy, right? So thank you all for listening to this, and I hope this was inspirational and you learned something. And the next time that your cranberries need to taste more like rhubarb, let me know.